Welcome back to OVERCOMM'D, a show with three very distinct personalities and skill sets. We're going to be breaking down some strategies, some results, and of course having a bit of a historical debate/discussion. We are joined by the esports historian, but rather than just bickering with him, we're probably going to be examining exactly what criterion define history and really shape the way we look at events and big matches in our scene. We'll begin, of course, with the actual most important thing that's been happening this week. Rostermania's kind of died off. We've had the awards shows. Everyone's had their say. Zywoo, Donk, all this crap. That's well and good, but we've had some CS played. Finally, Blast Bounty started. We got the online portion, and it looked, well, about as chaotic as everyone would have expected. Not usually really seeing this many upsets. I think we saw at least two that were huge, a couple that were debatable, but minor, but still upsets. And generally, we saw a lot of results that we just weren't expecting. I don't know about you two, but I really was alarmed by some of these upsets. And I've got a weird feeling, like, first of all, we've got to talk about it. This online CS thing, it feels like a bigger edge than it was last year. Is that just me? Like, has something shifted to really allow these players to make these upsets happen? Because it wasn't a thing in Season 1 last year.
Ooh, that's a very good question.
Blast Bounty plus that, whichever one it was, the Rivals one, or whichever the other one. You notice it does yield different teams again.
Open, I think, as well.
Has the one where M80
right?
made it through. Yeah. That was ridiculous. Yeah, well, like real teams. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a very weird one, I think, because now that you ask the question at the same time, I remember last year when they announced that that format, the exciting news that a lot of people were looking at was like, well, can this actually be interesting? You know, we get the phase where one team picks another one. There's going to be some personal vendetta there. There's going to be a little bit of strategizing about it. So initially, I was very excited about the format. Later on, I didn't really love it when I saw it play out, and I didn't feel like it was the optimal thing. But last year, I was disappointed because there wasn't a single surprise, and that was the main thing for me. It was, you get to actually see a team like the Eyeballers choose to play against FaZe Clan, not just randomly get matched up. So then you're hyped up, and then you go into the game, and you're like, whoa, if they win now, it's even more of a badass move, right? So it's a great storyline. But the last two seasons, there was no surprises. This year, I was thinking about it. I feel like one of the reasons that we have seen these amount of surprises is also because of, first of all, it's not a new format anymore. Second of all, I think for a lot of these smaller teams, you can really see how much more important that type of a game is. Right, I think JW was one of the people that said it. He was like, for us, this is the most important game of the season, probably, right? So you can imagine that these guys didn't start practicing like a week ago. They didn't go to the HLTV Awards in comparison to some of the guys on the Tier 1 teams. For them, this is not a warm-up into the season. For them, this is, we do well at this event, we might have an opportunity to make it into the major. We don't do well at this event, we're screwed up. So I'd say they just take it a lot more seriously. I know this is generally a cop-out answer, but I feel like they would have practiced a little bit more and they would have just put everything they have into that one game.
And you could also argue, surely a team like Eyeballers of all the teams are the ones that didn't have a giant player break because they're not in the Tier 1 circuit. They might have even started practicing earlier. There's another reason why even when Blast was on LAN, when they had the partner teams, Blast opening tournaments to each of the seasons always had the craziest opening result. Remember, Evil Geniuses famously did beat Heroic when they were the #1 team in the world. And the reason why is the top teams just had all these weeks off where people haven't even touched CS, and then they come back and you think that's your warm-up, don't you? I'll warm up and get into the game. The team that's playing here, like you say, that's their world championship, that match. They're already won. They're ready to go.
Yeah, they have to be. Like,
what's hilarious though, bearing in mind, FaZe went from like, we just saw you in the major final to, holy shit, you can't beat literal washed boomers in an online game. Like, fucking hell.
Certain surprises were less surprising than others in that game. Like Bob XD as a star rifle, like, coming into this game, like, I was always told he's great. I'd seen some flashes in low-level play, but there wasn't really much exposure, like, him to Tier 1 players, him to Tier 1.5 players. There wasn't that much play. So the fact that he comes in here and still looks like a Don, like, his first bullet isn't crazy, but he looks so confident, so self-assured. He took a lot of really smart decisions, good risks. They played really well off each other, and he had one pretty crazy, like, spray transfer at the top of Banana Inferno that was pretty cool, but it was interesting to see, like, him performing well, but also, on the other side of things, FaZe, Brokey got out-orped by JW in 2026. We were right to have all these conversations and slander the hell out of him.
He got out-orped by history at the major.
The joke is he got out-orped by his father in Counter-Strike. That is the style of play he copied, and then JW was like, listen, Junior, I've got the old man strength. Let me show you how it's done. I love it. I love that part.
Yeah, the dad strength is real, clearly. I'm just frustrated at this point. When I watch this game, I'm like, firstly, we see that same problem crop up. The Brokey underperformance. But we also see like sloppy things from FaZe left, right, and center. The details not addressed. I think for me, that's why it does end up being, in terms of ranking disparity, it might be the biggest upset. But in terms of predictability, I had everyone yelling at me this is going to happen. I was like, surely FaZe can just show up, shoot some heads, be fine. But they were just beyond even their usual self, which is a little loose. It is a little puggier than we expect for a top team competing for top championships. They were just a mess. Everything was done in a slightly discoordinated way. The utility was missed. It just, I don't know about you guys, but did it feel like FaZe didn't take the game seriously at all? Like, that's kind of how I came out of it.
I think this is always a very difficult thing to say. It's like a team didn't take it seriously. I think the way to frame it would be it didn't mean to them as much as it meant to the team on the other side, right? But I feel like the truth is somewhere in the middle for FaZe, because as much as I think we even discussed that on the previous episode, by the way, where we said that FaZe making the final of the major doesn't really mean that they fixed a lot of the issues, right? So going into this season, there's probably going to be more. I still don't like the idea of being part of the people that just look at this one result online, considering they've played just LAN in the last couple of months. This is their first game at the start of the year. They haven't had the time to warm up. They haven't had the time to do anything. It is an outrageous loss. But in the end of the day, it's just one online series for a team that has had an intense last couple of months and has been more used to playing LAN the last couple of months. So as much as I want to say it's very disappointing, I wouldn't put too much weight into that one game. I will just say that it is on display the possibility for FaZe getting a lot of these issues that they had in 2025 prior to making the final in the major, and showing us that those issues are still in the team going deeper. Now, does that mean that I still believe this team shouldn't change anything? No, I still would want them to change anything, and I think them making the major is actually not the greatest thing for them, because it probably made them stick around with that 5-man lineup. But in the end of the day, I feel like that could have happened to a lot of other teams. I really believe that. I mean, maybe not the Eyeballers, maybe another team, but as you said, they played well. BobXD, who the reason I love him is because this fella was a support player. He was a B player on Mirage on CT side before, and now he's a star player out of nowhere. I don't know how, I don't know when, but he is.
Gareth Bale.
Yeah, basically, he is the Gareth Bale of Swedish Counter-Strike.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, he was always a support. He was always the left wing back, and now suddenly he just started running and being the best player so much that they were like, you know what, we're just gonna put you in connector. Yeah, screw B-abs. But yeah, I feel like as much as the Eyeballers played a great game and FaZe played a bad game, I think the angle here is more like, first of all, how important and how important it is for those smaller teams and how well they've prepared and how well they play. Because I think in general, it doesn't really have to be just FaZe. I mean, NAVI did the same. There's like 3D Max did the same. A couple other big teams did the same, and it could happen to some of them in the future. So I'd say the format is really putting FaZe in a position where they could show their flaws to everyone, if that makes any sense.
I'll give you the angle where you have to be these spots of story to be able to remember these things. Everyone else gets allured by all the narratives. So everyone is going to take what I said to be like humorous, where I made the extreme contrast of they were in the major final, so now they get wrecked. Yeah, but here's the other thing. At the same major, if that history guy fucking diffused, we'd all just be thinking this is par for the course.
Exactly, yeah.
When they were losing the Red Canadians, everyone was like ready to call for the disbanding of FaZe Clan. Like, the joke is, though, now we're all just going like, but now you get figure all that. What about it, though? Bloody finals and beating NAVI and that. So it just shows you that this FaZe Clan, it wasn't that they just fixed everything. They also had a run that was out of nowhere that was like, it was some Cinderella shit the way they just went through that whole tournament. Problem is, none of those conditions apply here. There's no stage pressure for the opponent. There's no it's the major. There's no, wow, we're legendary. There's none of that. It's just this is why, by the way, I actually, even though I hate the fact that 100 Thieves is going to get away with not playing online CS because everyone just told me simple as to grind with 0 lands to attend. But I get why they don't want to do it. Because, mate, when you play top-level CS, it is really hard to go and play a random online game of CS. Like, to you, again, that's nothing. To someone like this is the chance to prove themselves. So, unfortunately, they want it so much more than you do.
Yeah, there's a big disparity in hunger. I think that's what a lot of people notice. I mean, you kind of at the same time, in the same breath, you're we have to, berate a certain team for getting it wrong, but we're also making excuses for them. Shouldn't we also just be giving credit to the teams that showed up and did deliver? Because saying FaZe played nothing but LAN, so did Falcons, right? They weren't playing CCT in December last year. These teams that actually did just come to this event, and I know that Falcons didn't take the entirety of winter off to study, break down everything, rebuild their strat. No, they kind of showed up half playing last year's strats.
You know what? I can say for sure. Monte and Nico were the only two people that attended the HOTV Awards. Everyone else was just playing and grinding during the award show. Okay. So they were putting in the work. That's the one thing that I saw.
Yeah, they created 3/5 of a strat. That's great, but
oh yeah,
like this is still a team that wasn't preparing for this match, this ecstatic matchup. So I do think we have to give credit to the teams who did win. Sinners just got utterly annihilated by Spirit. There are teams that are managing this. So when we look at a team as talented as FaZe, we have to be sort of on their case. And that does bring up this second question, though. Like, maybe the FaZe one isn't that surprising. FaZe have got a reputation for online play being poor. They, as we said, the major run kind of masked the cracks. Like, they painted over it a bit. In that sense, then, who was the team that you were most surprised to get upset? Was it that Monte NAVI game? Because NAVI are known for being a bit more strict, disciplined, tactical.
That's pretty nuts, yeah.
Yeah, or was it, hell, Inner Circle's 3D Max? I know no one's watching it, but it's a new Inner Circle roster. It's a 3D Max that's stuck together, been top 10, top 12 in the world at worst.
And in theory, one of the best players is one of the people who left Inner Circle too.
Yeah, Ken is a fantastic player for them. So which one do you actually think is the biggest surprise, like realistically?
I mean, I do think actually, for me, I agree. The Monte NAVI one, in a weird way, that's more shocking to me than the FaZe versus fucking Eyeballers one, because again, Monte, this isn't 2 years ago, guys. They don't have fucking Boros and all those guys. They're all long gone. Like, it's a totally different squad. In fact, it is actually a bunch of people who are sort of rejects of the last 2 years who were supposed to be prospects, who were supposed to themselves enter the tier 1 teams. So it's not even like a legendary Monte squad. Meanwhile, NAVI, one thing I always say about them is, I actually think one thing I appreciate about Blade and NAVI teams is the floor of their game is usually pretty good. They'll lose to the top teams, but normally because they're so good at the fundamentals and they're so well drilled, they're the sort of team you can kind of rely on to dispatch an underdog type team. So that is kind of shocking, especially because like the last map, it was even comfortable for Monte. It wasn't even like it was just like they just won in OT. Like, no, there was some close games, but fair play to Monte.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about this game as well is the fact that, because I watched the entire thing from start to finish, I didn't really feel like Monte had to lug their way through the series. I felt like they were, even from a strategical point of view, I think they were pretty competitive with NAVI, which is not usually what you're used to seeing when NAVI are playing against this level of opposition. And then again, there is the factor to be said about when was the last time that NAVI played an online game like this? When was the last time that Monte had that type of an opportunity? Also, they're playing with a stand-in, so there's even less pressure, and there's no pressure when you're playing against NAVI in a game like this. But in general, I still remember I think it was the Star Ladder Budapest Fall 2025, basically the event they did before the major. NAVI went over there. There was a bunch of teams that were better than Monte in terms of the tier 2 space.
I like the way you said you think that. You casted the event, mate. You were there.
Yeah. No, I was. Well, I was at home, technically. Technically,
well, whatever,
technically
true,
I was at
okay.
home. But, no, that was the last time they played. I mean, I think that was the last time they played a tournament that had only teams like that.
Oh, it would make sense. Yeah.
And and back then, it felt like the difference was massive. Like, it wasn't even close. Even the teams that I think could play good Counter-Strike in tier 2, some teams that I would say are a little bit better than Monte, I think the difference was massive. So, it's a bit underwhelming. But again, first game of the season. I also think some of I guess the fact that Monte are playing a very unique, well, not really unique, but they are willing to take risks. They are playing very proactive Counter-Strike, even a little bit reckless. And we'll be talking about that a little bit later on. But I think it's a good match for NAVI when they don't have a lot of tape on the team. And especially when a stand-in is coming and replacing one of your best players in Ryu. That changes a little bit. So probably a little bit of unpredictability, of some clutches going in favor of Monte. But all in all, I feel like everything worked out for them. But for NAVI, again, I'd say for FaZe is maybe a bit more concerning because they had the issues last year. For NAVI, I wouldn't say is that big of a deal, especially for me. I mean, it's still a little bit underwhelming, but I don't really see a world in which NAVI are just going to go into the next tournament, which I think should be Krakow for them, and just be underwhelming and just lose to everyone 0-2.
for this team, when you look at it, look at the players on Monte. It's all just rejects. Like Rainmaker was the dreaded player who had like the time in Liquid, and everyone hated on him.
He's
BMAS
back,
is
man.
the guy who used to
Liquid's
be on the mouse type level teams way back and got kind of booted out. Although we'll see, he's a good player. The fucking which one is it? I think it's the Gizmy guy, right? It wasn't he the one, or was it the Azwood? I think it's
No,
Azwood.
it's Azwood that was on Saw.
Yeah, he had like a cup of coffee
Yeah.
in Saw when they were international briefly. And then obviously Afro used to be like the fucking Fnatic Orper, if people remember.
Yeah.
So like this squad is just people kicked out of other teams. Here's the thing. This is like the please can I have a real job team. Like it's just a bunch of people who keep playing and they still obviously want to be pros, which actually is also why I win. Like this is good for them. Like this might actually get one of them a spot in a better team.
Yeah, the big part of it we're going to talk about later is obviously the Gizmy IGL part. Like he was a Monte Gen player, promoted, and eventually taking over the reins once the team.
My God, there's a
kind of
Monte
broke apart.
Academy team. Holy
There is.
levels.
At one point, it was one of the best academy sides at some point in 2024. Like they were kind of
Fair enough.
laying pipe. Like they were pretty
Can
damn
you
good.
go and say they're the best?
Didn't say they were the best. I wouldn't say they were the best, but they were one of them.
Okay, you said
They
one
were
of them. Okay,
third
that I
at
can back.
worst.
All right.
You know, and when Navi Junior or
Right.
Navi Academy were shadow banned, they were second really because they were playing the bigger events.
Right.
But I think this is a take I've just seen in chat that I have to admit it feels a bit weird to propose as an upset, seeing as NIP were the 22nd seed, Liquid were the 6th. So officially, this is not an upset. But I, like many others, 100% come into this game thinking NIP are going to play the better CS, should be favoured to win. The form Liquid had shown end of last year, honestly, well, basically the last 4 years, just pretty poor. I was surprised by the way it ends. Now, it does end with probably the biggest name on the server, Elige, going absolutely ballistic, multiple aces, drops a 2.0 rated map out of nowhere. But still, that one kind of surprised me. I'm not going to lie. I wouldn't say it's officially much of a shock, given the ranking disparity and all that stuff, and name value. But that one was a bit of a shock. I don't know about you guys. I didn't have much stock in Liquid. They made no changes, but despite that, I expected it to be a long climb up to relevancy from the lows they've reached.
The problem is, on paper, every time you look at the name on paper, you go, this should actually be a really good team. This should be like the 7th best team in CS. We look at the names on paper for Liquid. The problem as well is, if you saw NAP at the major, they're really good at losing really close games. Like they're actually world class at losing OT in 13-11 games. Unfortunately, although they do have a new player as well. To be fair, they're bedding in and they've moved a few spots. But I'm actually generally quite favourable towards NIP. I do think they'll be good. The problem with Liquid is, I want to say I believe, but like I'll wait for some results first, man.
Yeah.
I've done that before. I've done that too many times now.
Yeah. I think also one thing that needs to be brought into, because I again watched the game, I didn't really feel like NIP was the worst team. I think the main difference in the end of the day, it was always going to be a 3-map, but in the end of the day on the 3rd map, you lose in overtime, and Elige goes 34-18, and you lose both pistol rounds, and you're still able to get it into OT. So it was very competitive. I wouldn't say NIP should be very much disappointed out of this. Also, they had a very slow start on Nuke. It was like they got only 3 rounds on the T side on Nuke, and they lost the map, winning 10 in the end. So I think it was just a couple underwhelming starts, a couple players on the other side that are world-class riflers for Liquid popping off. So I wouldn't say again that it's an underwhelming result for NAP considering they're a new team. I'd say that I'm basically with Duncan on this. I feel like this is going to be a team that's going to progress and play some good Counter-Strike.
Yeah, well, they already did. That was my entire frustration. I've voiced this a few times now. At the major, NIP, despite the losses, played fantastic CS. The calling was really good. I mean, the only one, the exception to that being the 3D Max loss, where they utterly capitulated. But the 2 series before then, they played fantastically. They just didn't close it. And, winning is a skill and all that stuff, so they clearly weren't good enough. But still, the initial way they'd built their T-sides, the way they'd gone into the other team's map picks, they played super well. Just didn't have the final poise, the final touch to close it all off. Hopefully they can sort that out, because if they do, they should be in the top 10. They should be competitive. I think Cairns an upgrade at that position. They already have quality pieces elsewhere. This should be considered a pretty decent shock in that sense, where I have such a high esteem for this team, the IGL, the pieces, that they should have been winning this game. That's why I want to bring it up, because it is a bit of a shock in that sense.
Sure. Yeah. Also, now they have 2 star rifles, which is always a positive thing, right? Because Kaspersky is not going to have to be the only one. Now you have both Karen and Kaspersky. So on paper, they should become better in terms of firepower and in terms of a lot of aspects in comparison to before.
Plus, look at this. If you go and look, right, number 11 on HL TV is bait. Number 12 is 3D Max. Number 13 is Pain. And number 14 is that bullshit Astralis, which won't even be real, etc. That's totally plausible an IP could be like 10th or 11th. Mate. That's an entirely reasonable projection, I think. That's what I would expect to happen in a month or two.
Yeah, continue seeing the value out of Shush, continue seeing the stars, poking heads out. Hell, this was a pretty positive sign from Wrinkle this series, which is usually one of our big question marks. Is like, can he master the art of being aggressive and flashy and not throwing everything away? He rode that line pretty decently in this series, which is a nice change, because I think there's been more negative than positive of late with Wrinkle. So yeah, positive takeaways for some teams, despite rather frustrating losses. And yeah, other teams just taking care of business. Just a side note, Gentlemates, one of the most convincing 2-0s of the entire event so far, kind of out of left field for a lot of people. Like, I picked them. I like them as a team, as an underdog, a dark horse. You always have to give Alex some credit. Those tier 1.5, tier 2 IGLs who just constantly get it done no matter how crap the team is. I'm always a big fan of them. And shout out Alex for doing it again, straight smashing an M80 side that people had a little bit of hope for. Like, I know not everyone's as big a Jaber fan as I am on certain aspects of his play, not all. But we saw there, they just looked a class above. So you have to give a small shout out to the teams who actually did just take care of business. We move on now to our second topic of the show, which is going to be, Thorin, we're going to need your opinion on this. We're going to need your takes, we need your framing, because we've reached a point where this year there will be no Katowice. There will be Cologne, but it will be the major. So then we're left with 2 prestige events. Like, we have another major, we have Cologne as a major, and then there's nothing else. Our field has gone from 4 to 2. And I've seen already the discussion start in terms of what should be considered prestigious, what should or shouldn't. Is it, like, what factors go into it in terms of formatting, prize pool, history? It's an interesting discussion to have, and that's why I thought we would be here and broach this one. Because I know a lot of people pushing for certain events like Chengdu. Some others have seen want some kind of blast event to be considered amongst the prestigious ones. What is it for you that firstly defined Kato and Cologne as being prestige events no matter what? Like, they're up there with the majors, almost as important to win. Like, how does that sort of evolution take place? Like, what is the secret sauce, the ingredients that make it prestigious?
I mean, first of all, obviously, the way that they originally established it, they used to be majors. And then after a while, because they were awesome events, even if they weren't a major, ESL realised, wait a minute, we don't need to run this as a major, actually. It's a massive, it's essentially the next best event anyway. And in fact, I would argue the last couple of years, because I don't like the Swiss system at the major, I think actually that they had superior formats to the major. I actually think if they except for the fact the major is called the major, I think the best tournaments were Katowice and Cologne. I always said that. I think they're the most sturdy, best format. All the top teams, by the way, even had a better qualification system, didn't it? Like, they used to do it almost the VRS system anyway, when they used to invite people to the plane, etc. Meanwhile, for the major, we used to have those janky ass RMRs. So what I'll say is this: a lot of my thinking around the prestige thing, because it's one of the things I coined, comes actually from how we did majors in 1.6, which is there were no official Valve majors. So what we did instead was, somehow as a community, mainly of pros but also fans, we were able to do something akin to the prestige event where we just called events like this the majors. And the reason why there was a consensus, I thought about this a lot over the years, and I think this is how you can define the prestige events, because I agree with you. The problem this year is, it's not Katowice, it's Krakow now. That might end up just being the same as Katowice, let's see. But let's see how it's all set up. Obviously, part of that was... Yeah. Again, everyone was used to that environment. And then Cologne obviously would have been the other prestige event, but it's a major, so there's nothing to do with that. So I agree. Going from 4 to 2 already does hurt it. If you don't know, by the way, I can tell you, when HLTV did their top 20, part of how they also evaluated players was they looked at the big 4 events. They also counted those as the big 4. They counted those as the most important tournaments. Then came the Chengdus, etc. So one of the things I'll say from the 1.6 days is I think there's a couple of criteria here. Right. First of all, I think that one of the reasons why events are prestigious, like I just said, is they already have that tradition and that history established already. So it's the idea that even if EWC this year said 10 mil for first place, it hasn't yet become a legendary event, though. It hasn't become. It's an event. Look, no one would skip EWC, but it's not the event that you live and die for. The joke is, if you ask Mongols, which event would you have rather won, Blast Austin or EWC, they would trade that in an instant for the major title. Of course they would. It doesn't matter that there's all this money. That's irrelevant. So first of all, you want it to be established. That's why I agree. The problem Krakow has is it probably should just be Katowice's spot. But let's see how it plays out. What if it's all scuffed? What if there's issue? Who knows yet? We haven't seen yet. We sort of knew what to expect from Katowice. Then similarly, one of the ways you know that an event is one of the most important events, major or not, and is established, is you can actually see it through the actions of the players. There's a great quote. I forget it. I'll probably slightly butcher it, but the gist is correct. It goes something like, actions reveal hidden preferences. It's the notion that it doesn't matter what you say or what you claim to think. How you actually behave will show what you really prioritize, what you care about. Now, with the exception of that one time in 2017 where Australia skipped Cologne, in general, nobody skips Cologne and Katowice. Again, you really do on your calendar go, we want to beat these two majors, then of course we're going to beat Katowice and Cologne if we get the invite. Then you worry about the other ones. That's why you might skip a Pro League or you might skip an IM, another one elsewhere. I think the actions show, right, in what world ever could you imagine a team? I'll give you an example. Even though Spirit get banged on for it, I'll give the real reason they do it. Spirit doesn't really just constantly skip events. They have 5 Russians, and it's hard to get Russian visas. And even when you get the visas, you can only spend so many days within a certain time period in the Schengen area. So the problem is, if you are going to attend a lot of events and boot camp, you will actually have to pick probably an event each season to skip, for example, especially also if you've got travel conditions. Like, I'll give you an example. Say you have the European visas, but you're on the third leg of a 3-event trip, and then the third one has to be in America. You might, as a Russian, not be able to go home, have 3 weeks to submit your passport and get the visa. So there will be events people will skip for other reasons. But the point is, I would just challenge anyone. Can you really imagine anyone skipping these prestige events? It just doesn't even seem conscionable. In fact, you can even argue, if you look at things like the HL Top 20, it would immediately even ruin people's perception of you as a team. Then they'd say stuff like, well, you can't be the number 2 player because you skipped one of the 4 events, whereas the other guy was in the semis or the quarter. That would be a reason given against you. So I think if you look at players, this is how we did the majors in 1.6. Those were all the events that everyone wanted to attend. No one would ever have skipped all those events if they were all on the calendar. The joke is you would skip 2 other events to make that one if you could. And then lastly, this is another thing I came up with myself for the majors in 1.6. Right, there was actually at the first ever Intel Extreme Masters, it had a lot of the criteria that would have made it like a major event. In fact, if people don't know, in later years, they used to have regional things in IEM where they'd have like a European final. And because Europe was the best in 1.6, the irony was the European finals was probably a top 5 event of the year. So another criteria I came up with is because we want this to be prestige, as in these that matter the most in your career. The reason why I don't think you could have like back in the day, just a European final be a prestige event is because it has to be possible for all players to qualify to, in my opinion. It has to be that every great player, so even if you were, actually was the case in 1.6, we had like some amazing Korean players in 1.6. You can't have a tournament they can't attend because that also removes some of the prestige. Think about it. Also, the reason why players attending it makes this prestigious as well is because these events tend to be literally rammed with the top 10 teams plus. Like, you just don't get anyone skipping. So you never have that thing that you have in the rest of the circuit of like, we've got 4 of the top 5 here, guys, but this 5th one skipping, or the 8th best team had to skip. Literally, you can guarantee the top 10 will be at all these events. And so then the matches then create the rest of the history. Also, by the way, Katowice, the Spodek, the Lanxess for Cologne, legendary arenas that are also known to gather thanks to where they're location, the fans that make it a sick vibe. Like, weren't those 2 of the most neutral fan bases? Everyone, they were just kind of fucked with CS, didn't they? There weren't some Brazilian fan base hating on you or something. That I think there's a lot of, notice a lot of this is vibes and narratives, but by definition, we're coming up with an abstract concept of which is the prestige event. What do you guys think?
I feel like for me, prestige has always been connected to legacy and history and memories, right? You can't manufacture that. You can't just create it artificially. So that's why I think it's a very good example. Like if EWC or any other TO just comes out and says, okay, we've got a new arena, we've got a new venue, we're going to make an event for 3 million. No one is going to consider that prestige. Teams will want to go and play it because it's going to give them a decent amount of VRS and it's probably going to be good conditions. They're going to earn a bunch of money. All the talents are going to want to work it, of course. But in the end of the day, it's about the history of Counter-Strike, which I think is one of the most beautiful things about this game, is the fact that you can just follow the timeline and the storyline. That's why we're all getting excited, for example, that the Eyeballers beat FaZe. It's not just because FaZe fell, it's because JW is on the Eyeballers, sure. Right? And then when you look at some of the events like Kato, like Cologne, I mean, VP won their major in Kato in 2014, right? NAP won their first in Cologne in 2014. Fnatic won 2 out of their 3 majors at the start in Kato and Cologne. So it's just the fact that when you go to these events, even judging by the way not only the players but the fans treat them, it's like throughout an entire year of Counter-Strike, the fans are going to probably, if you're a diehard Counter-Strike fan and you want to go to events every year, you're going to go to the 2 majors, and the only 2 other events that you're going to want to attend are Cologne and Kato, right? You're not going to be speaking with the same amount of excitement about anything else. So I feel like it just adds up. It's an amalgamation. It's history, as the fact that it's always been there. It's always been able to deliver with some very good matches as well, some historic moments for the game. It's the fact that the fans associated with it and they still keep on loving it. Is the fact that for the players, a lot of them, especially of this generation, have grown up watching those majors that we just pointed out. So imagine how sick it is. You remember when you were like 11 and you were watching and you were grinding and you were watching JW live the trophy in Kato or Cologne or whatever. And now 10 years later, you get to play the same event. Well, not Kato anymore, unfortunately, but you get to play Cologne, right? And you get to play it as a major. So I feel like all of these things are just making it feel special. I don't think this is something you can manufacture. I don't think there's a formula that you can say an event needs to be in the circuit for, let's say, X amount of years, and this needs to happen and that needs to happen for this event to be considered prestigious. I feel like it just either happens or it doesn't. And thankfully, we are blessed in Counter-Strike to have that happen. Oh, it's fine.
I'll also say as well, I agree with what you're saying. Because players have grew up watching that as like the history of the game that they aspired to. Literally for Cologne, if you're in a team like when Saw did it in 2024, bro, just making the Lanxess Arena is like a prize for you.
Yeah.
Even if you'd have gotten banged out, then obviously the Katowice one, they literally did it with the stairs. When you walk up the stairs to go onto the main stage, you have to see the history of all. Now, look, I always get triggered that they have the Gambit one on there from the online one, but we'll just allow that. We'll put that to one side. We all know how fucking brainwashing works. But the rest of it's all legit. That's actually a dope idea, by the way. As you climb the stairs, you're seeing with it. Fanatic. That's fucking sick. That makes you like aware, like you are in the presence of history, mate. Do you want to be legendary? Do you want to be an also-ran? That's dope. No other event has that. You know, when people say, as you pointed out, like the 2 events they always say is they say Chengdu because it had like a cool crowd or whatever, and spoiler was won by fucking Brazilians. So there's that one. And then the other one is they also say that whenever the Blast World Finals every year, people try and angle that should be like a prestige event. But first of all, these don't have the established history where we keep going back and back again. They're just kind of one-off events. And then secondly, does anyone actually feel that way when they climb the stairs to the IM Chengdu stage? Do you feel like I'm walking in the footsteps of Pasha and Kenny? No, you just go like, oh, cool, there's a bunch of fans. That's good to know. That's good to CS games. Come on, bye.
Also, I think the region matters because the Asian region is a little bit behind in terms of development when it comes down to, you know, the legacy and history of Counter-Strike.
Then we'll go and fix it.
Well, I mean, you can make a prestige event in NA probably, you know, if you put a lot of effort into there.
Don't worry about that.
Oh, yeah. Dallas, Boston, I don't know, man. I just feel like in Europe, Counter-Strike is in the roots, very, very deep. I know it is in NA as well. Probably in South America, people feel that way as well. But I don't think it's a bad thing when you say that in Asia it's not the same, because now they're catching up and everyone's cheering up for that. Like, I like the Mongols. I like all the other teams. But the truth is, they don't have the same history in Counter-Strike that the European audience has and the European teams have, right? All of these legends from 1.6, like 90% of them are European. And then there's some from NA. So I think it is normal for some of those European places to just be, you know, more desired by people. And for those moments when people are just walking out in the arena, like even if you're watching from home, your heart just starts pumping blood and you're like, oh, this is that time of the year. I'm just getting excited. I don't feel that way when I'm watching Chengdu, even though I like the event.
So there's a point here that I want to hit on, because as you mentioned, there's no specific formula. You don't say if event has existed for greater than X years, where X is, you know, pick a number. It is now entering the sort of the league that is prestigious. It's entering that sort of rarefied air. But there is sort of an aspect that I think a lot of TOs, Blast have fucked up dramatically, where they have refused to stick on a location. They've refused to maintain or create a single brand when it comes to their actual, firstly, event names, which change every 2-3 years. Like every 2-3 years, there's a new Blast product. It runs for a bit, then it's going to be rotated out for something else to try and adjust for the rules or whatever's changed in CS. They haven't sat down and just gone like, okay, every year, this time, we're going to have our biggest event with our biggest prize pool. It's going to be our grand final. And we're just going to call it, I don't know, the Blast Royal Copenhagen whatever. Like, pick a name. I don't care. Anything more iconic than Blast Bounty Season 2 Finals. Not going to be very hard for you, considering
the
standard you've set on your naming, Blast. And if you'd have just repeatedly done it, gone to it time and time again, hell, negotiated a deal with ESL where actually Grand Slams can be won as well at our events. Add something to your events. Have that event be put forward every year to be potentially a major until you get it. You could have done a lot more, is what I'm saying. With the amount of attention and the amount of space they've held in the circuit, Blast could have been in this conversation with a legit, historically important event.
The obvious one they had was the Royal Arena. That was fucking banging, mate. Like, but the problem is they always just did that as a fall final, and they never made it the world final. It's so bizarre, isn't it? I would have made that my Katowice.
Yeah, and there's nothing prestigious, historic about that. Like, sure, it's cool when the fucking Globetrotters come to town, but you don't care what they win or lose. Like, it's not the same.
Bro, how many years, it was a lot of years, has the Blast World Final had a top team go with a standing or skip the event? Like, it feels like a lot.
Yeah.
Again, people didn't treat that like it was a prestige event, unfortunately.
Yeah, they screwed up the part where you build the story, the mystique, the importance by moving it, by not having a repeated, iconic, identifiable brand for that big event. And so, yeah, other TOs, by the way, PGL, Star Ladder, if it is your intention to be one day as big as ESL, you need to have that event. You need to have that event that people know is going to happen. You're going to place it tactically to be like, this is your best performing one in terms of the number of teams and quality of teams that will attend. You've got to create that brand forcefully. You've got to manufacture it to a certain extent. You can't just allow the whims of the scene to just flow in your direction and eventually, we've stumbled into having a Cologne level event. That's just not going to how it's going to work, like, at all.
Yeah. I think it depends as well on what the TO wants to do, but from that point of view, like, why wouldn't you want to have a prestige event organized by you, right? I think it is a little bit refreshing that Blast are moving locations every now and then. Like, it is cool. It's probably cool for some of the players and the talent that they get to go to different places, but in terms of building prestige for the event, it doesn't really. It just makes people be like, well, Blast is the fun friend that we're not best friends, but we sometimes go for drinks, and I don't really know which bar he's going to take me to, but it is going to be fun, but it's not going to be the best kind of vibe. This is what I'm getting out of them. With Star Ladder and PGL, they actually, I think, are in a very good position to try and do something like this. Like, Star Ladder obviously have that opportunity with Budapest, which I think a lot of people enjoyed, so this is a good opportunity. And PGL have that with basically any town that they want to choose in Romania or over in Kazakhstan. Which I think would be cool, to be fair, now that I think about it. A little bit disappointed they had to cancel the Belgrade event, but I still think even if they were to commit...
pull your card. I'm going to have to pull your card. Every motherfucker can't tell me Kazakhstanis are Asians, and then you tell me that that's an awesome prestige. I thought you said it had to be in Europe, bro, which is it? Oh, you're playing that game?
No, you know what? Kazakhstan, technically, Kazakhstan does have a European part. Kazakhstan does count as a European country to some extent.
Okay. Where is Kazakhstan Europe? It's last I checked, my history, it's Middle Asia. Like, it is not. No,
there is a small part of Kazakhstan that could be considered European. I am willing to die on that hill.
What's that?
I'm willing to die on that hill.
What's that Hobbit's trophy cabinet?
Yeah, I'm having a hard time picturing that, but.
It's just one of them living in Serbia that has an apartment. That's the part of Kazakhstan that's in here.
Yeah, nowhere near Astana. Is it even close to anything else that's significant? No, Almaty is the other side of the country as well. So you have to pick a random ass village basically in Western Kazakhstan to try and make that case, and that's just ridiculous.
No,
even
you know
for
what I was saying here. It was not necessarily connected to doing a prestige event. It was more like, you know, have your place where you're doing events every year, which is going to help the brand. No, I can't get out of here, you know, boys. I've had a stinker. Shall we move on?
We can.
Well, here's the thing. He just wants to work PGL Astana, doesn't he? It's just obvious. Okay, he's trying to advertise using the...
you know what
the opinion in through this.
The thing is, I'm not getting that event regardless. Regardless of what I say, I'm not working it, so it's fine.
No, but that is something that is curious to me, though. If you are talent... and you do want to just travel the world, see interesting stuff. Like, 'cause to me, Middle Asia's been on my list for a while. It's like, yo, I would push for it if I was just trying to knock some stuff off my list.
You know what?
Please, Blast. Go to Tajikistan.
Yeah. I have a hot take that goes against what I just said, because I know it kind of sounded like I was trying to hype them up. I actually don't really care where the events are being made if it's not like the venue. Like, for example, if it's prestigious, if it's Cologne or Kato or something like this, or if it's a major, I'm gonna feel the the heebie-jeebies, I'm going to feel excited. But in terms of the city and the history and whatever, that's cool. But for example, when I was in Budapest now for the major, I spent like 3 weeks and something. I barely had to walk around the city. Like, for me, it didn't matter. I was from the hotel into the venue, into the gym, back there. If the arena is good, if the history is there for the arena, I mean, it's good in terms of the audience, but I personally wouldn't really care if you put me to cast in Budapest or Belgrade or Bucharest or whatever. Is just, the town and like the tourism aspect of it. I don't really see it as an opportunity to see the place, if that makes any sense.
You're entirely correct, just because, well, one of our prestige events was Katowice, for crying out loud. Like, that's not a touristy space. That's on nobody's bucket list who doesn't watch CS. Like, if you don't watch CS or Dota, I guess, there were Dota events there for a long time, you're not bothered about Katowice. Like, I've wanted to go, and every time I've talked to someone who doesn't follow esports that, oh yeah, I'd like to go to Katowice one day, they're like, where's that? And I type it in, they're like, oh, Katowice? Where is that Poland? And like, yes, this is the problem. It's not really related to the caliber of city as far as global tourism. So you're right in that sense. I just think that, the big thing to consider, the main point, the main detraction from a lot of Asian-based events is just the time zone difficulty. It's hard to hype people up for a trophy lift if they're all asleep, But that being said, I think Singapore is a pretty great city. I'm really excited for that. Like, I'm really excited for parts of the calendar that do touch it. It's just when we're trying to have this conversation, it's not the same. It's just not the same.
Hey, man, both of us can try and get hired from PGO. I mean, probably not going to happen, but we can give it a shot.
But okay, let's get into our third topic. Because I thought this third topic may be the most long-winded of the day, because we are going to actually step into one of the upsets we talked about in the opening section, and break it down, see exactly what happened. Because Monte beating NAVI, as we've said, should not have happened. It just simply should not have happened. And Ted, you're going to talk us through it. Just give us the general overview first, or tell me when you want to see when you want to see rounds on screen. But what actually happened in your eyes?
So one of the main things that we're going to be focusing on this time around, and this is for the sake of switching things up with how things were last time around, we've got the main narrative of that game between Monte and NAVI. And I feel like outside of NAVI being a little bit underwhelming, outside of the stand-in situation for Monte, one of the main points for me is that Gizmy came in and did a very, very solid job as an in-game leader against one of the teams with the best IGLs and best coaches in the world in NAVI. Now, we're going to start it off by looking at a couple of rounds. We've picked Mirage, the T side for the sake. This is one of the better maps for NAVI. It always has been. So I felt like it was only good to look at how Gizmy was navigating around, how he was calling, and just look at the way that Monte was not overcomplicating stuff, but they were putting a lot of thought into it. We're going to kick things off with round number 20. This is one of those moments where we're going to see how good or how well the side of Monte can actually make decisions on the fly. Now, one of the things that they were able to do very well throughout this entire game was condition NAVI towards middle with the top mid smoke, with the window smoke, switch it up with connector smokes every now and then. This time around, we're going to see NAVI try to actually anti that. Well, not anti, but try and counter. And this is a moment when NAVI is actually in the lead in the game. But middle has been a big part of the game plan for these guys over at Monte side. So what do NAVI do? They send a lot of guys there. They try to fight it. And what Monte are going to do in that situation is we're going to see the moment when the smoke goes in from the B player on NAVI in towards the apartments with the trajectory of it. That's going to happen in just a little bit. Actually, it already... I think Alexi should turn around and throw it now. Yeah, he's going to turn around. He's going to start walking behind. And you can see that the two mid players in Afro and Gizmy are being chased away from middle by Makaze, Wonderful, and Alexi. This is when Bima says, hey, you know what? I've heard a utility. I've heard a guy leave. I know they're challenging middle. I'm going to try and take the gap. And what Bimas does is just goes and follows his instinct. That was a straight up default play. It's not something that I would put my money that Monte wanted to do from the start of the round. It's just the decision being made. It talks about how much of a free mindset they have going into some of these rounds and how much initiative some of those players are going to be taking. From that point on, Rainwaker gets a kill onto bid over towards the A-bomb side. Bemis is able to drop Alexi B. The round goes on. And because of that move, Monte are able to get the round. They punish the space and they start cementing their comeback. Now, we go into the next round, which round number 21 is a very simple one, and we're not going to spend too much time on it. But after emphasizing on the willingness to make plays and read the situation. Now we're going to see how well they actually know what to go after winning a round. This is one of the things that I think Gizmy did a very good job at. After having so much presence in towards middle throughout the entire T side, this time around, you go with the window smoke, you go with the top mid smoke, you go with the con smoke. This is the first round in the entire game on the T side of Mirage where they don't have a single player lurk in middle. And you're going to see it when the execute comes in. You have both Bit and Ima just looking towards middle at all times. Same for Wonderful, by the way. All of them are so anxious about a Monte player coming in, but the call is 3 people just walking out of Palace on the execution. Those guys are basically useless because they're still looking for someone that's never going to come out. The swing comes in, Raywaker gets the first kill, and then even though there's a couple refrags going through the smoke, the moment that you get faked out and the player in CT dies, this round is basically over. Then you move into the next round, and again, perfect default coming out of the side of Monte. And after you've called something off of spawn, a set strat, what can you do? You go back to the default. You started with a pocket play. Afro boosted top mid, punishing Wonderful, who's been peeking connector so many times so far. And what this round emphasizes is how well Monte know how to get that opening kill. And then 11-10, Navi have no money. They're in a 4v5 early on. What do they need to do? They need to start pushing. Rainwaker is going to go back and re-clear ramp on the timing. He knows no one's aggressed Palace. Bemis is holding B throughout the entire time. So the only obvious answer is that Navi's going to try something in towards middle. They do it. The punish comes in from top mid. Azu waits for Gizmy to take contact and then peeks and punishes the connector player. This is just perfectly executed counter-strike out of Monte. And across those 3 rounds, we saw 3 things. Willingness to make plays and read the situation. We saw very good realization of how Navi could react. It shows intelligence in Gizmy's calling. And then we saw the creativity and awareness in the final round where they're willing to lay back and just wait and punish Navi. So all in all, I feel like that was a great game plan and a very good call on the fly coming out of Gizmy. He was really calling like he wasn't afraid of being read into it. It was more like he felt he had the upper hand tactically.
Yeah, I mean, this is an excellent sequence. Like, start to finish. You got 3 very distinct rounds where we're using defaults. We're also anticipating reactions, which IGL versus IGL is kind of how we see, who's got the better read. And in this moment, we saw Gizmy actually have the understanding, as you described, we're holding this extremity, we're holding that extremity. This is the numbers reality. It's unlikely Navi are just going to turtle up as a 4-man group in a bomb site and just wait for something to hit them. They are a proactive team. They are a smartly led team. So they do go for that push. They get punished. Yeah, a really great little piece of calling and leadership. I think full credit to Gizmy as a player, relatively unknown. Like, I know who he is. I watched him on Monte Gen. A couple different instances there were of that team. Like, there were some more successful, some less. But he was a consistent partner. I'm sure. I don't think he even started calling like when he first joins Monte Gen. I think eventually he takes over.
No, he's a newly formed IGO. Yeah, he's no. Yeah. I don't think he's always been an IGO. I think that's a fairly new thing, like a couple years, maybe 1 or 2 years.
Yeah, and he's picked up the role fairly quickly. He's from people I've spoken to who've talked to him, who know him, there's certain elements of his sort of character that seem to lend themselves quite well to the leadership position. He's got great confidence in himself, and you've seen him in the past actually frag very well in Tier 2, so there's a certain amount of individual belief that he carries with him that I think is quite important. And yeah, we saw that, just some ballsy calls to go for. Obviously, they do close out this map with that Rainwaker 1v3, that we're just going to roll that round 24. I believe that is the round where
by the way, it also just looked like Navi did actually underestimate them and thought this is just like play it like a random pog. So we do stuff like just spread out, just hold. Because like, think about that second round he showed there. They had 0 presence on one entire side of the map, including mid, and Navi was still holding 3 people there, as if it's like, we'll just wait until they rush it. And then essentially you gambled there'd be no information play from the CTs, and then you got all out onto A into a 5v3 after the first 2 kills. Like, you completely isolated those 2 people. Like, that's one thing that is a hint that someone's IGLing well. It's one thing if you load up the demo and the guys are running with the AKs to shoot people in the head, right? That's nothing. In this case, you're actually like pushing and pulling the other team around the map and then creating scenarios that are literally favorable before you fire a bullet. That is a good sign.
Yeah, even the clutch that's running in the background, Rainwaker has space to just walk out onto A to get himself in that deep position that catches Navi somewhat off guard. Sure, he does make a nice play to win it in the end, with good shooting and also out positions, and catches Wonderful a bit off guard with his relocation. But they're still at the core of that round. there's a pretty nice, mid challenge in the mid round. Create some spaces, create some gaps, and push your players into the right places. This is just classic T-side mid-rounding. Things that we want to see from good up-and-coming IGLs. Things that we don't, always get to see. Like, it's sometimes tough to evaluate young prospect IGLs. But when we see a round like that, or see a series of rounds like that against a really top opponent, we at least start getting some hope, right? And I don't want to get overly excited. Obviously, the UK CS scene has been in love with Gizmy, Azuwu for a little while, and especially now with Gizmy getting this win, that sort of excitement's going to come into like an absolute furor. Like, it's going to be this crazy crescendo of overhype and craziness, but some of it feels at least a little bit deserved, just off the back of what we've watched there.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's exciting for the reason that we mentioned at the start of the episode where Duncan described this team as, the project of rejects, a bunch of guys that haven't had a lot of success elsewhere. I think Gizmy is probably the one exception because he hasn't really had the opportunity to get rejected by a big team so far, right? Everybody else on the team has had that issue. And I think this is a big result for them, right? I even had the opportunity to have a quick chat with Rainwaker after the game, and he told me before the start, that was for a Bulgarian interview, he told me, well, I thought maybe we could win a map because the 5 days of practice we had were actually decent. But then he's like, but in the end of the game, I looked at it and I was like, oh shit, we actually could have 2-0'd this. So he was even very surprised. And one of the reasons I'm mentioning that chat with him is the fact that even though I asked him, and he was trying to be very politically correct, and he was like, oh, I don't really know the guys. I couldn't give you a good opinion. I don't want to jinx it because we've played together for only 5 days. One of the things he told me was that he was very pleasantly surprised by Gizmy as an in-game leader. The way that he leads the team, the way that he's relaying information, the ways that he's given ideas. And I feel like Gizmy's just been very impressive in that sense. I like IGLs that have character. You watch the team play, and you know that this is Gizmy's team playing. This is what I'm a fan of, right? Because you can tell that this guy is trying to follow his instinct as an IGL, but then in the same time, you can feel how he's given freedom to a lot of the players. And it is a little bit predictable, I feel like, to some extent. If you're Navi and you take it a little bit more seriously, maybe you can study the game a little bit more, and then the next time you play them is going to be a completely different story. But it is a good ace to have up your sleeve when you're a team like Monte and you have those good individuals in an IGL that likes proactive Counter-Strike. You can catch people off guard. And especially if you get a Bulgarian lurker who happens to be a free agent right now, please sign him. Give Bulgarian Counter-Strike some hope.
Lord above. The Rainwaker side of this is interesting. He comes in for Ryu, and as we saw, Ryu goes over to that Astralis team, has a pretty great series in their 2-1 win over Fnatic, especially that overpass map that they needed to claw back from down 1-0. They needed that win. He drops a really insane stat line. But of course, again, in map 3, still solid. Helps them close out the series. It's a lot to ask of Rainwaker to come in and sort of match the impact they lost. Because Ryu was the shining star of Monte. Without him, that was what I was a bit suspicious / doubtful of this Monte sort of team coming into this event. Sure, I've heard good things about Gizmy. I don't know them. I'm not a big Afro guy. BMAS Azuwu, solid, but nothing especially thrilling. I needed a Rainwaker that looked like the Rainwaker who was leading the world in clutches when he was playing in all Bulgarian teams. Had the most total clutches, super late round impact kind of player, and we got that. Sure, it's most of his, if you look, the HLTV stats on clutching are hilarious because one map, 1-1v3, and his clutching rating is a 99. But generally in the late rounds, I thought he did find good spots to activate, found nice plays to make, hit some decent, tidy little sprays and cleanups. They do look at least exciting as a 5 right now. Going into their next matchup, we don't know who they're playing. But if this team makes the LAN portion, are we talking one of our future staples? How excited should we be getting? I know you seemed really locked into this game, Ted. What's your takeaway?
I wouldn't say this is a team that... I'd say if people are looking for a team they want to be excited about in Tier 2 that might break into the Tier 1 circuit to some extent, be a Tier 1.5 and be very consistent throughout the year, I'd say just look at Parivision. That's the obvious one. Monte, I don't imagine... I can't imagine Monte's going to be that type of a team, but I can imagine Monte being that type of a team that plays every second PGL event or qualifies for an EPL or even able to make it into the major, stage 1 or whatever. It's just an upset team. I don't know how high the ceiling could be and how high the floor is going to be because I've seen some good stuff from them before and then it's followed to be very bad after. So I'd say they have the potential, but I think I think some stability could be used. And also, as much as I really want to ride the Rain Waker train and say that he's the greatest clutcher out there, and the last 6 months he's getting one clutch every 4 maps, which is pretty decent. Because, for example, Robs, who was the best clutcher last year, was getting one every 3 maps on average. That 1 versus 3 that Rain Waker clutched, as much as he played it well, that was probably the worst possible way that Navi could have played that 3 versus 1. And you're probably not going to see Navi play as many 3v1s like this, with wonderful missing shots, with everyone peeking one after the other when they know exactly where he is, when he needs to go and pick up the bomb at Palace. They just underestimated the situation. So as much as clutches are like this, I would say that I want to see a couple more results out of Monte, especially on LAN, but against decent teams, before I get my hopes high, because it's completely realistic to expect that, going into their next game, they're just going to get beaten by a better team. It could happen.
Boys, if you want to see a clown, you go to the circus. You don't go and meet him at fucking Subway, do you? Like, there's online merchants. Of course, online's where they're going to be fucking doing all these randy-ass upsets and crazy-ass players. And people like Navi are going to be like, shit, we actually probably should look through this team. What the fuck? They've had X days practice. So, I don't know. It sounds to me like they caught lightning in a bottle on this one,
Yeah.
Well, they've played limited LAN. Obviously, like, they are not a big team attending huge events. They won a small Stockholm LAN against some other tier 1.5-ish teams. Like, they beat out Foot, OG in a circle to win.
It's the same as with Eyeballers. I'd even say that Eyeballers have more consistency than Monte have had in the last couple of months. It's just...
In terms of online play as well, yes. It's just, I always
exactly.
caveat Eyeballs LAN play with they played Swedish LANs, chill out, But
I
would just throw this to you, Thorin, to bring us back into a full circle. We started off talking about the upsets. Which ones are the most surprising, the worst? Navi here, a big shock. Having looked at it, does this change your perception of this team going into the rest of the season? Do you think there's potentially... we talked about how there was a lack of roster moves a lot recently. Like, there's not that many big names making changes. Does this signal anything to you about Navi, or is this just par for the course? They're just warming up for the rest of the actual calendar to come.
Like I said about the FaZe one, the difference is FaZe already showed me bad signs at the end of an entire season, and when they've even got their real lineup, etc. This, for me, does just look like a team came back from the break. It's even a team you potentially couldn't even scout. Like, could Blade even have gone and found this? How can he? It's kind of right jail before. So I also feel like it's probably the most primed moment for Navi to lose. The issue with Navi for me is, I also do think they're a team. I wouldn't have expected them to be that great online. I don't think they've got like demons who are just aim monsters in general. So I think the difference is, you get Navi to a LAN again, like Krakow or whatever. I imagine they'll still just be a very solid top 8 team, and they'll mix it up and be a playoff threat and stuff. I don't worry about teams that have Blade as a coach in general. Like, not only do I think he's really good at course correcting, but I notice his teams have a level of consistency and flow to how they play. So the problem Navi has is this. Because it's still in your brain, 13 months from when they were the best team in the world, it feels like Navi should be gunning for titles. I don't think they can do that with this roster. But I do think they can be a nice gatekeeper team, or like I say, round out and be a 7th or an 8th team. I still think they have good players. In fact, one of the most underrated things I think about Navi is, I don't think it's obvious who you cut from this team. I think it's even one of the problems you've got if you are a Blade and Navi. I don't think there's any bad players in this team.
Yeah. I think the thing with Navi, if they were to make a replacement, is kind of like, look at the player that we want to take. Who does it make sense for him to replace on our lineup? If he's much better than our players, and like if we're getting a superstar, for example, if you were getting Frozen in some imaginary universe, it's like, look at Frozen. Who can he replace without messing up with our system? And I think this is how you make the decision. I agree. I don't feel like there's one guy that you look at and you're like, he's underwhelming, we just cut him. And I agree. I think if you were to replay that game, even though I like the game from Monte, I think it was a good game of Counter-Strike, I don't feel like it means a lot more than it already is. I don't think it's one of those things that we need to talk about more than just the context of what happened in game in terms of the tactical development of the game. For the future, if they meet at LAN, I'd put my money on Navi 10 out of 10 times. And I don't think it's going to be that close. Maybe they can get a map, but still, I wouldn't say so. I think Navi's pretty good gatekeeper on LAN.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Obviously, I don't see the matchup happening anytime soon, unless Monte do qualify for this LAN coming up. They make it through the online period, qualify for the LANs, then get their VRS, bumped up by that. Sure, maybe we'll see the matchup recur, but yes, for now it is more of an interesting little insight into a young up-and-coming IGL. Navi themselves, probably not too many takeaways. I mean, I do love your point about, who would you replace? Is everyone? I know who I'm replacing. I've had my opinion about Navi in this set for over a year. I'm not going to repeat it. Everyone who knows my content knows exactly who I'm cutting tomorrow, especially for Frozen. Oh, any day of the week. But to get back on point, I just think this is a classic case of tier 2 underrated. Tier 2 clearly has more hands.
By the way, the other sad
brains.
thing is, I don't know if you ever saw, but there actually was once an interview by Frozen where he essentially confirmed that it was real, that he could have joined Navi. He said something like, yeah, but no, whatever. He said some weird line like that implied like it was true. The problem he has, bro, is he is trapped in an insane codependency relationship with Carrigan at this point in time. He can't leave him. Like, I can't quit you, Carrigan.
So he's just waiting for Carrigan to retire.
Sadly, I feel like that unironically, that's almost true. I feel like he's not leaving now, mate. And now that Twist is here, it seems like he's just stuck in phase, and but by his own choice.
Yeah. I mean, he's locked himself
That's why
in.
all the copium now is the idea they're going to get Senzu, isn't it? That's the one everyone's pushing that angle to.
Yeah.
I don't know if I believe that personally.
We'll see, because I've also heard the buyout for Senzu's 2 million, which
brilliant.
Not going to happen. I don't think anytime
BC
soon.
Game might be down to do it in a couple months.
Okay.
Yeah, but once they've got their VRS done, they've stolen the Portuguese VRS.
I'm just kidding. I'm just taking the piss.
I'm not.
They should do it, because here's the thing.
Yeah.
Within a single calendar month of him joining BC Game, we'll know whether he actually did get burned out or not, or whether that was bullshit. Because after 1 month of Electronic telling you shit while being shit himself, you will absolutely be burned out, and all your motivation for CS will be gone. So we'll see. That's the ultimate test. That's the water.
I think the real joke is how long did he play on the Mongols? He played there for like 3 years or 2 years. I think it was 2 years. If you are getting burned out after playing with the Mongols for 2 years, I think you need about like 2 practice maps with Electronic and Simple. It should get you to the same level.
Yeah, it remains to be seen what happens with that. But yes, more events happening in the next few days. More games will be played, and we'll be back with another OVERCOM'D before you know it, breaking down more demos, breaking down more debates, and of course having a nice little chat. Thank you all for tuning in, and yeah, we'll see you next time.